Julie, appreciate you being here as always. Let's start with Judge Chutkan's latest. We were just talking at the top of the hour about a Trump gag order in the New York civil trial that he is now, according to the judge, he has violated, has a $10,000 fine, and says things will get worse. There is in the D.C. criminal trial relating to election 2020 and January 6th stuff. Judge Chutkan also had a gag order, but then removed it, but then reinstated it or something. Bring us up to speed here, Julie.
Right. So Judge Chutkan, and I have a piece up on my Substack. I was actually in the courtroom on October 16th as she heard both sides debate. She was very harsh and critical and confrontational with, of course, Trump's defense lawyer, but very accommodating to the government. So she did issue this 3-page, really flimsy gag order. You would think for an unprecedented ruling of this nature that it would be really substantive and cite case law. That's not the situation at all. So, of course, Trump's lawyers immediately filed a notice of appeal asking her to temporarily stay, which means hold her gag order. She did that. But then, at the government's behest, she lifted her temporary hold, citing his tweet about, or his post about Mark Meadows. He's not supposed to make any public statements about reasonably foreseeable witnesses. So this is dozens of people. That was somehow in violation of her gag order, that there was evidence that he would not abide by even the basic contours of it. So she reinstated it, where it will remain in place until his appeal is heard by a 3-judge panel of the D.C. Circuit.
So, Julie, what we've seen, and Buck and I were just talking about this from the New York City court, is they're just going to fine Trump, it appears. $5,000, $10,000, and those are relatively minor inconveniences to Trump in some way. I mean, he can even spin it as, I'll gladly pay $15,000, $20,000, whatever it is, to be able to say exactly what I think. We played Eric Holder as well saying, hey, I don't think you could ever put Trump in jail over contempt of court. What do you think Chutkan would do? Because if we're all fighting over, oh, she's going to fine him $20,000 because she doesn't like some Truth Social post, I think he would probably be like, yeah, I'll pay, and he can appeal and see whether or not that's justified, and it can go on to the court. But if it's just money, I don't feel like this battle is as significant as it would be if there was any sort of potential arrest or imprisonment for violating this. What sense do you get about how ballsy, to use a lack of a better term, but how risk willing to take, I think ballsy's probably the best, Judge Chutkan would actually be to put a former president behind bars because he violated a gag order?
I mean, look, she's ballsy. She is ballsy. She is highly partisan. She was appointed by Obama. I have a lengthy piece, too, at Real Clear Investigations. I poured through thousands of pages. I think we talked about this, of court transcripts where she's made inflammatory, prejudicial comments about Donald Trump and his supporters. So this case should be nowhere near Tanya Chutkan, but here we are. I think she sort of relishes the spotlight. She's a former dancer. She came to the States from Jamaica to be a performer. That didn't work out. Somehow she got a law degree and ended up on one of the most powerful federal courts in the country. So I could easily see her sort of jumping over the fine options and doing something even like home detention, which is a consequence that they discussed in the court hearing. At the government's behest, Molly Gaston, who is the assistant U.S. attorney, walked through a number of things that she could impose if Trump violated this gag order. And certainly imprisonment would be one of them if he violated it once or twice. And to your point, saying, well, the fine doesn't matter. He's very wealthy. He doesn't care if he's fined $10,000 or $50,000. We need to do something more severe, and that would justify something like home detention or curfew or certainly incarceration.
Okay. So, sorry to cut you off, Julie. But if I'm advising Trump, then I am like, you want to get arrested for saying something in advance of this trial. I can't think of anything that would be better for Trump than if they said, hey, you can't leave Mar-a-Lago, that he just leaves Mar-a-Lago and dares
I was going to say, Clay, if they give him home detention, you know what he's going to do? not detain himself at home, right, Julie? I mean, and then what happens?
So that's my point. I mean, I almost think, Julie, the best possible thing he could do is keep pushing this, because if she arrested him before the trial even started, it helps his kangaroo court argument immensely to say, yeah, they tried to convict me of a felony. The judge put me in jail before it even started. I think this would blow up in her face massively.
I think so too. And keep in mind, no matter how the media describes this as a narrow gag order, it is anything but. Buck and Clay, this gag order is public statements. It's not even criticism. It's not name calling. It's not threat based. She is banning him from making public statements about Jack Smith and his team, but also, as I said, what she called reasonably foreseeable witnesses. So take this as an example. You've got former Attorney General Bill Barr doing nothing but this nonstop tour, the smear campaign against Donald Trump, making all these accusations about him. Yet Trump cannot respond because William Barr, the government says, could be a government witness in the trial. Now, of course, that's absurd. Bill Barr is never going to take the stand in this trial. He would never subject himself to that. He'll have all sorts of options, executive privilege, possibly 5A, a lot of options to stay off the stand. The government is not going to call one of the most hated attorney generals by Democrats to have him testify before a D.C. jury. But yet this is the sort of double standard that they're setting up. Bill Barr can say whatever he wants and Donald Trump can't respond. So to your point, even if he said something to contradict Bill Barr and the accusations that he's making on Fox News or in these speeches that he's given, then you just make a statement. And then what is she going to do? He will help expose the folly, the absurdity, the unconstitutional nature of her gag order. So I would certainly encourage it.
Julie, what do you think? I mean, because you've been following this so closely and you've been in the courtrooms and this has been something that you've been on in a way that, you know, very few others, if any others, have been so closely attuned to. What do you think Jack Smith in the D.C. trial presided over by Chutkan, what is the end state that he is really going for? Is it just a conviction and then, you know, he doesn't really think beyond what happens there? Or, you know, like, what does he think he can get out of all of this?
I mean, I think he just wants quick convictions. I am still not 100% satisfied that he's not going to bring superseding indictment. I know you guys and I have talked about this.
Yeah. Oh, but Julie, I mean in terms of punishment. Like, is it just to get the conviction and then even if there's no punishment, he doesn't really care because it's about branding Trump a felon? Or do you think that the special counsel actually wants to try to incarcerate him?
No, I think Jack Smith absolutely wants to incarcerate him. Let's talk quickly about the timeline. The trial's supposed to start March 4th. They said this trial could be 4 to 6 weeks. That puts us towards the middle, perhaps end of April. He will be quickly convicted by a D.C. jury on these 4 really vague counts, including obstruction of an official proceeding. After a defendant is convicted, it's 2 to 3 months before they're sentenced. So then you bring the sentencing towards, the end of June, early July. A defendant cannot appeal until he is sentenced. So during that timeline, he can't really even appeal anything. Now, there might be some special considerations for him, but typically you cannot appeal until you're sentenced. So he wouldn't even be able to mitigate any of this legal disaster until the summertime. But absolutely they want Trump behind bars. And so does Tanya Chutkan. She suggested it once in court to a January 6th defendant, that making a comment that Trump is still a free man and not behind bars. So this is a collaborative effort. And, I know people don't want to think that this is really happening, but this is why her criminal trial is taking place first, is because this will be the quickest conviction, a quicker sentencing to try to figure out how to get him in jail before the election day.
Julie, you have covered January 6th, unlike almost everybody, in terms of the political prosecutions that have followed it. What did you think of the Jabal Bowman when they finally come out with the video of him removing the signs, his excuse that he was just trying to open a door? That's clearly not true. If Jamal Bowman were a Republican, based on what you saw for January 6th, what would have happened to him compared to being a Democrat?
I mean, he would have been charged with this 1512C2, obstruction of an official proceeding, which is a very vague, this post-Enron law that more than 300 defendants, including Trump, have been charged with by this DOJ. And it's a very vague law. All it says is anyone who attempts to or does obstruct an official proceeding is guilty of this felony count, punishable by up to 20 years in prison. So it was clear in that video that he was trying to set off some alarm, whether it was the door alarms. When that didn't work, then the fire alarms. He should have been charged with obstruction of an official proceeding. Then he should have been charged with interfering with law enforcement, because as the affidavit and other witnesses said, he was near Capitol Police as they were trying to evacuate the building. He never went to them and said, hey, by the way, I'm the one who pulled this fire alarm. Also, obstruction of an investigation, obstructing Congress. He should have been slapped with numerous offenses, not a local misdemeanor. He wasn't even charged with a federal misdemeanor. He's charged with a local misdemeanor, slap on the wrist. He'll be able to do it again. And, I just heard from so many J6ers after that whole incident. They are just infuriated because the double standard, it's almost like they shove it in their face because they know that there's nothing that can be done. The DOJ, Matthew Graves, the DC U.S. Attorney, won't be investigating Jamal Bowman. I asked them, they wouldn't confirm or deny any investigation. They won't. This will be swept under the rug and just added to the long, long list of double standard of justice for Democrats versus Republicans.
Declassified on Substack is where you can follow Julie Kelly's work. Julie, as always, appreciate you being here.
Thanks, guys. Happy Halloween.